Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Politics and Prose. I'm Brad Graham, the co-owner of the bookstore, along with my wife, Lissa Muscatine, and we are very excited to be hosting Jane Leavy, who's here to talk about her new book, Make Me Commissioner. I Know What's Wrong with Baseball and How to Fix It. Now, Jane's truly a pioneering female sports reporter who worked for the Washington Post in the 1980s, first in the sports section covering baseball, tennis, and the Olympics, and later in the style section writing features about sports as well as about politics and pop culture. She then went on to write best-selling biographies of three baseball greats, Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, and Sandy Koufax, as well as the comic novel Squeeze Play. In her new book, Jane turns her attention to the troubled state of baseball itself. As a lifelong fan of the sport, she shares the frustrations of fans everywhere with how an obsession with analytics has taken the fun out of the game. Exhibiting her characteristic blend of intelligence, enthusiasm, and irreverence, Jane recounts traveling the country, talking with players, managers, executives, and historians about what's gone wrong with baseball, and she offers common sense proposals for reinvigorating what used to be our national pastime. Now, as an added attraction this afternoon, we are also very excited to have with us Mike Rizzo, who, of course, until earlier this year was general manager and president of baseball operations for the Washington Nationals, a team that he joined in 2006. Mike's been involved in baseball either as a player, coach, or executive for more than 40 years and appears in Jane's book. And in conversation with both Jane and Mike will be another expert of the game, Stefan Fatsis, who is confident that Jane has zero chance of ever being named baseball commissioner, but he does agree with much of her critique. Stefan is a former reporter for the Associated Press and Wall Street Journal, and known for his work on sports and the culture of competitive games. He's also written 3 books, Wild and Outside about a minor league baseball team, A Word Freak about the world of competitive Scrabble, and A Few Seconds of Panic about his summer training experience as a place kicker in the NFL. Now, his next book, which is due next month, is called Unabridged and is about the modern dictionary. In fact, he'll be speaking about the book here exactly 2 weeks from today, so look out for that. Please join me in welcoming Jane, Mike, and Stefan. You can make it.
Okay, so let me hold this still.
Okay, I got it for you. There you go. All right, here we go.
Oh, I hate those new. Like the old ones better.
You need a cover.
Can you hear me? Yes? All good? Excellent. Hey, I'm Stefan. I'm not Mike or Jane, in case you were confused. It is great to be here with my friend Jane, who's written not so much a manifesto about what's wrong with baseball, but I want to be clear, it's a fun, open-minded travel log about the modern game. There's so many terrific scenes and interviews and anecdotes in this book, including her conversations with Mike. And Mike, thank you for being here and supporting our friend Jane, who is a sports writing legend, of course, and also journalism. It means a lot to those of us who write things down for a living, so we appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. All right. All right, I want to start by saying it is the last day of the baseball season, as many of you know. All games start at the same time on the last day of the baseball season right now. So, Commissioner Leavy, it appears you did not consider that when booking your own event here.
You don't want to go there. Some of you know that story already, but I won't go into it. No, it's not on.
We'll just hold it up near, close to your mouth.
Now it has to be on first.
There we go.
No, I didn't consider that because After all, who wants to see the Mets humiliate themselves again?
I do. I do. Anyone else? Yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
I just have to say that the reason I'm attired this way is it's my Mets outfit in honor of my father, who was a Mets fan after the Giants jilted Upper Manhattan. And he grew up on Coogan's Bluff. Some of you may remember what Coogan's Bluff was. Rocky outcropping of Manhattan schist hanging over the Polo Grounds. His father, my grandfather, this is so you know I come from really good stock, was a bookie and a rum runner. And my dad was the little guy who sat on the back of the Model T to hide the hooch when they came across the border from Canada. And in thanks, my father became the water boy for the New York football Giants in 1927. And some people think other things happened in 1927. No, that was in my family. One thing happened. And so he became a Mets fan, and circling way forward, or you don't circle forward, but way forward, on his deathbed, when he was in a great deal of pain, having broken his hip and waiting for surgery, I read game stories to him about the Mets, and it was 2003, so they really sucked. One of the many times they really sucked. And literally, as they wheeled him away for surgery, his last words to me on this mortal coil were "Oi, the Mets." So, in preparation for "Oi, the Mets" again today, this is in honor of my dad. Is that what you wanted to know?
Not really, but I'm glad you said it because it was funny. All right, so playoff spots are on the line today. Divisional titles are on the line. On the MLB network this past week, I watched 4 games at once in 4 boxes on a screen. It was really exciting. We've got a guy that has hit 60 home runs, a la Babe Ruth, Cal Raleigh. We've got another guy, Shohei Ohtani, who hit 50 home runs and struck out as a pitcher more than 50 batters, which no one has ever done before in baseball history. Baseball seems pretty good to me today, at least today. And I know that's a loaded wind-up, Jane, but
Sure
why
is.
did you want to write a book about what's wrong with baseball?
Because I love it, and it needs to be better than it is. And yes, there's some really good games today, and there have been some exciting races. If you like the dilution of talent with extra teams popping up all over the place. How did you feel about the pitching dilution in the 60s, right? And it's getting worse. And now they want to do more.
There are plenty
teams.
more markets that can host teams.
And they won't have enough money to support them, just like the other small market teams.
We need to let Mike jump in here at some point, but yeah.
Yeah, Mike, say something.
Well, I love baseball, and thanks for having me today. And I've got plenty of time these days, so we're going good. And I think the game of baseball is the best sport in the world to watch. I think it is still the national pastime of the United States of America, and I think that we do have to modernize the game a little bit, speed the game up a little bit. I think the commissioner hit a home run with the pitch clock, and you're talking to as purest of a baseball person as there ever was.
Oh, we're going to get into that.
And the pitch clock was, I think, a savior of Major League Baseball. And a tip of the cap to those guys for doing a controversial and out-of-the-box decision to implement that. So, reading part of the book, I read the chapter that involved me mostly, but and read some of the other aspects of the book. I did think it was a very funny, humorous book. I know all the characters in the book, of course, and I could just hear Dusty saying some of the things that he said, and I've heard those and many others that weren't suitable to print. So,
you're a baseball lifer. You were a scout. Your father was a scout. You came up through baseball the hard way, from the bottom all the way up. You ran the Nats for 17 years, and I assume maybe you'd like to have another job in baseball. You are, as you said, an old school baseball guy. Jane, in her book, has a lot of prescriptions for what needs to change in baseball. Let me ask you a sort of an open-ended question, which is, in your time in the sport, particularly the last 20 years when you were at a higher level, what have been the biggest changes in the game to you?
Well, I think that the two biggest things that we had to attack as an executive front office in the baseball and the way the game was changing was velocity and spin rate. Those are the two things that are the holy grail of pitching. And pitching, as anybody
Pitching's at the top of your list.
Anybody who's followed me knows that to me pitching is king. It's if you run a pitcher out there every 5 days that gives you a chance to win, you're going to have long-term success. And if you don't, you're going to have long-term pain. And I think that not only the Nationals, when we were at our apex, showed that pitching is king. You never have enough of it, and I think that the secret sauce of any successful organization this year is acquiring, developing, and keeping healthy your pitching staff. And I think that's the key to every organization.
I was going to save pitching for later, but since we're there now, Jane, you've got some prescriptions about pitching, because the big issue with pitching, of course, is that you're burning through arms. Kids are taught to throw as hard as they can from a very young age. They are treated more like commodities, and they are trained to learn how to throw as hard as possible. And the prospect of having elbow surgery, UCL surgery, ulnar collateral ligament surgery, is not as daunting as it would have been 20 or 30 years ago. Jane, what do you think should happen with pitching? And then I want Mike to answer that question as well. What needs to change?
Well, first of all, I just want you to know Mike agrees with me, so I'm just going to speak for the two of us here. I counted, as of this morning, last day of the season, 70 MLB employed pitchers, meaning at the MLB level and in the minor leagues, have had Tommy John surgery this year. That's more than twice as last year. So whatever they're doing by cutting down the number of innings that people pitch, it's now averages for a starter 5.2 innings, isn't working. MLB did put out a very good report with a lot of good information back in December, in which they acknowledged that it's a real problem and they basically don't know what to do. I do. So, the pitching staff isn't big enough, bottom line. And of course, the owners are going to say, oh, we don't have to pay for more expensive players, blah, blah, blah. Well, they spent $1 billion on having players sit on the injured list last year. And of that $1 billion, 2/3 had to do with pitching arms. So I think they can afford a few more guys. In fact, it's a $12 billion industry. I don't want to hear even the poorest of them cry poor house.
So you're saying expand the major league roster.
Expand the major league roster in this specific way. Instead of having the pitching staff be what it is today, which is 13, you got 13 until they drop dead, and then you have to bring somebody else in, and then you have to scour everybody else's waiver wire just to find out the guy still can't pitch. And so instead, you start the season with either 15 or 16 pitchers, right? And every day you get to designate which of them are going to be available that day. The others, presumably your starter from yesterday, because he isn't going to pitch again to the next day, and your most arm-dead relievers go on a taxi squad like the NHL. They take a couple of days off, and they sit down, and they don't throw, maybe they throw a side session, maybe not, but they rest. Because if we don't, it isn't just that it's bad for the health of these guys. Yes, they can get Tommy John surgery. There have been 151 who have had revisions, including Ohtani, right? And so you can come back, but not all of them come back, and they don't all come back to the level that they pitched at before. It's only 59% of them do. So it's also bad for the health of the game. Pitching, the change in pitching and how it's deployed and how it's damaged people is the biggest change in my mind, since Mike was in diapers. And
A long time ago.
well, it's coming again soon, isn't it? Okay. You can see we almost wrote a book together, and we might still do that, right? Yeah, you never know. Yeah. I knew I wanted a real baseball guy, and the most baseball guy I could find is him. He knows what he's doing, and he knows what he's talking about. So anyway, the numbers of pitchers, disappearing daily means that you can't root for guys who aren't there. How do you identify and say, gee, I really want to go out to the ballpark because the last time this guy pitched a no-hitter, well, he's not going to pitch a no-hitter anyway because nobody's going to let him stay in the game long enough to throw a no-hitter. So the storylines that devolved from great pitching and dominant pitching no longer exist. Baseball can't tell the same stories that it told when Mike put together his pitching staff. And I think I think it's wrong for the people who are pitching. I think it's wrong for the fans. I mean, what's there to go out to the ballpark to see?
Well,
Another home run?
I'm gonna jump in here, Jane,
Okay.
and say what you want to go out to the ballpark and see is your team win. And the way athletes are trained today, Mike, is to maximize effort and maximize potential. And if we need to bring someone else in, we bring someone else in. Narrative isn't at the forefront of most GMs. Well, at GMs, maybe for us, narrative matters, and for the game, narrative matters. But what's your goal as a GM or as a coach or as a manager?
Well, the goal is to ultimately win the championship. That's your goal going into spring training every single year. You hope to create a roster that gives you an opportunity to go through this meat grind of 162 games in 185 days, which no other sport even comes close to touching the physicality and the toughness it takes to grind through that season. But again, to take umbrage with one of your comments, we treat the players like commodities. Some people do, and some people don't. We got in a lot of trouble in 2012 for not treating a pitcher like a commodity, and we got blown out of the water for it. But at the end of the day, you look yourself in the mirror and say, I did the right thing for the right reason. And so, the secret sauce, like I said, is trying to protect your starting pitching. And like in football, the goal is to protect the quarterback because the quarterback is the quarterback. So what do they do? They create these rules that put the quarterback in bubble wrap, and you can't be physical with them like you can with the other players in the team. That's impossible with pitching. To expand a roster makes some sense. To have extra pitchers makes some sense. But the pitchers are still doing a physical act that is unnatural, and you're prone to break down.
Right.
And so I think that makes it a unique issue and problem, and something that we have to attack through all aspects and all stages of baseball. Now, this problem doesn't come when Steven Strasburg or Max Scherzer or Mackenzie Gore comes into spring training for the Washington Nationals. It probably starts in their travel league when they're 12 years old. That these problems and these issues are at the bedrock of what the issue is. So I think that's probably a big part of what we have to attack.
In case you don't know, he was referring to his decision. It wasn't we, it was he, because his manager and his pitching coach and his father were all furious when he sat Steven Strasburg down in August of 2012. And you cost him the World Series, what the f are you doing, blah, 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 blah. Mike showed me a binder that he kept track of when every pitcher who had had Tommy John surgery started to break down. in the season after. Do you still keep it? You still have
Oh,
it?
I still have it, yeah.
Yeah,
It's Exhibit 1.
Right. So, for a guy whose reputation was, hard ass, blah, 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 this was about as radically liberal a decision as one could make in baseball. And, I commended you for it then and now. And it's also the reason Strasburg re-signed with the Nationals in 2016.
And was such a big contributor to your World Series championship.
Yeah, he was a good pitcher, and we wanted to protect him. That was the bottom line. Right. And I told his parents the day we signed him that I'll take care of him, and we did.
We'll finish up with pitching, but there's one more thing I do want to touch on here, and that, Jane, in the book you spend a lot of time at a place called Driveline, which trains baseball players,
right.
Using every conceivable modern analytical, empirical technique, and physical technique too. Right. And it's changed the way athletes are trained from sort of an art into a science. There are unintended consequences of doing that. What, with regard to pitching or with regard to any players, what did you conclude about the way baseball players are trained and how that has contributed to the way the game has changed?
Well, the guy who founded and is Driveline, Kyle Bodie, is a poker player, and he worked at Olive Garden, and he's a wrestler. He's done everything. He's obvious and dropped out of college, and he's obviously a brilliant guy. So he was one of those people who, after Pitch FX debuted, 2008, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the first tracking thing that they were working on that allowed them to see where, how fast, at what tilt, at what bend, whatever a pitch was coming. So pitching has had a real head start on batting because they had numbers that allowed them to work with how to increase velocity. It didn't used to be something you thought you could increase. Suddenly they said, Kyle Bodie showed people, oh yeah, you may have been born with 90, which is how they refer to it, but we can get you to 97, right? And what kid who's been dreaming of being in the major leagues forever is going to say no to that, right? The problem is a lot of the things they do to enhance it are troublesome to arms. They don't train pitchers anymore, in what Sandy Koufax used to call, the kinetic link, the kinetic chain with a lower body supporting the upper body. They train the arms separately. So that's why you see guys running at walls with balls and throwing them as hard as they can and trying to outdo everybody else. And then, having to have smelling salts. That's quite a sight to see out there. But it works. And it's gotten increasingly sophisticated with the increase in data, because data science, guess what, runs baseball and the rest of the world now. And baseball can be seen. And my good friend at MIT, Pekko Hosoi, who created their analytics lab and helps people with stuff like this, points out that baseball is a canary in the coal mine. But you look at baseball right now, which is run and where decisions are made on probabilities and percentages and this and that and the next thing, you are seeing industries that are run exactly the same way, but you don't know it, right? And how many more are going to be. It's a warning. Baseball is maybe the greatest public service baseball has ever displayed, more than raising bonds in World War II, is to show us what happens if the human element, the judgment that Mike used in sitting Strasburg down, is eliminated and everything gets decided based on numbers. You can only tell somebody what's going to happen 9 times out of 10 with numbers. You can't tell them whether, some Washingtonians might remember this, whether a ground ball is going to hit a pebble in Game 7 of the 1924 World Series. You cannot, the pursuit of this kind of perfection drives me insane because it's impossible. To me, it's boring as far as I'm concerned.
Well, the boring is an interesting point. And Mike, when I asked you what's changed the most, I thought for sure you were going to say analytics have changed the game the most, and you said pitching. There's a lot in this book about analytics, as I mentioned. And Jane, you sort of talk about a cause and effect here. Like, analytics are not per se bad. analytics are incredibly useful, right, Mike? I mean, it's not that they're terrible for the game. They've revolutionized the way we evaluate players, the way you handle players on a day-to-day basis, the way you handle situations in games. But one of the side effects here is I think best illustrated by this quote that you found, Jane, from a Boston Red Sox pitching coach from a few years ago, in which he said, he was quoted in the Boston Globe saying that the way to win in the analytics age is to prevent the chaos of the ball in play. And Jane mentioned this quote to the great, now late Roger Angell, and Angell replied, well, what did he say, Jane?
He said the whole point is the chaos of the ball in play.
So, Mike, how do we get more chaos of the ball in play? Because strikeouts, home runs, walks have been the much publicized sort of bane of the decline in sort of action on the field.
Yeah, well, action on the field is the driving force of a lot of these rule changes, and I think that with the added velocity, the added spin rate, the four seam fastball up in the zone, which creates a lot of swing and miss, and age home runs because there's lift in the swing and there's a high pitch, and if when the exit velocity and the launch angle A plus B equals home run, that's what the teams are striving for, but that's what some teams are striving for, and I think that when you look at the 19 World Series, for example, the Houston Astros and the Washington Nationals struck out the least two teams in all of baseball. We put the ball in play the most out of all 30 teams of baseball. Those two teams that were there at the end put the ball in play the most. So I think that when you have to get away from the aspect that in the hitter's mind that home runs are sexy and home runs are good for my arbitration number and for my free agency and that type of thing. I think that when it gets back to how do I maximize my value as a player, meaning how do I help my team win? I think that when you come back to that mindset, and I think that that you will see the non-home run, the non-strikeout, and the non-walk have to be incentivized within the industry.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, in the book, Jane, you quote Dusty Baker, your buddy, calling data analysts little punk boys. Where's the tension these days between the analytics staffs and the scout front office people with a sort of longer view of the game?
Well, I can only speak for I ran the front office for this is my 26th year as the front office head. I was with Arizona and with Washington, 19 years in the front office with the Nationals, 17 as the head of it, and I can honestly say that that the respect factor we had across the aisle between scouting and analytics was beautiful. We never made a decision without the scouts' input or the analytical input, and it's part of the process. And if you didn't respect the analysts, you weren't a scout, and if you didn't respect the scouts, you weren't an analyst for us. So I think that the way you put together your staff is really important. I think that you have to educate both sides on what the other side does and what they really bring to what value they bring to the table. And I think that when you get that, and one of the pillars that I had when we were with the Nationals is the name on the front of the jersey is more important than the name on the back of the jersey. So be part of the solution, not part of the problem, and get everybody on the same page. And we did it successfully for 19 years with the Nats.
Jane, what did you see in your travels around baseball?
Well, I mean, I talked to Mr. National Ryan Zimmerman about this, and one of the things he said is the problem is people are paid, they're incentivized by ownership to succeed in basically one thing, or two things: throwing the ball 100 miles an hour or hitting that 100-mile-an-hour ball over the fence. And Francisco Lindor, the Mets, said, as long as you're going to pay people through analytics, then I'm going to hit home runs because that's what I'm going to get paid for. And Ryan Zimmerman said what made the 2019 team different is that it was a bunch of guys who were willing to do what used to be called the little things. They were willing to sacrifice. They were willing to hit the ball so that somebody could advance another base. And they not only do these guys not do that today, they're not taught how to do it. They're not paid to do it. Mike and I talked for a long time about whether the shift should be banned. He didn't think so, right? They'll adjust, he said. Bullshit. They didn't adjust because, one, they're not taught how to do those kinds of things. Two, it's hard to go the other way you choke up and go the other way on a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. And C, nobody believes it's worth the effort. They all say the most efficient way to score is a walk and a home run. So Ryan said, you can't have a team like 2019 anymore because those guys won't do those things. They don't do those things. And until you start paying them to do those things, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's a won't, or is it it's a can't or a won't? And you quote Sandy Alderson, former general manager for a bunch of teams, one of the most respected people in baseball the last 50 years. Sandy's quoted in the book saying, we've inbred to the point where everybody thinks the same way, looks the same way, approaches the game the same way, makes the same decisions, all of it with a view toward efficiency and risk aversion. You don't have to think along with the manager because everybody knows how the manager's thinking. It's kind of a one-size-fits-all. And Alex Bregman, third baseman, great player, Bregman is quoted in the book saying, this is what baseball has become. This is what you're supposed to do. Have you seen that Mike, in your years of sort of how development has changed of players? Is there this sort of standardization of swings and motions and training? And how has it affected the game?
Well, I've always said that we're a copycat business. Baseball's a copycat league. When somebody has success doing something a certain way, you look at that and you say, how can I incorporate some of that into my franchise? It worked there. Maybe I can incorporate it into our philosophy, and maybe it'll help us win. So we've always had that, and I think that we're a trendy sport. I think that the pendulum has swung. A few years ago, way towards the analytical side. Before that, there was no analytics. Before Moneyball and all that came out, there was no analytics spoken. Davy Johnson was doing analytics in 1978.
Earl Weaver was doing analytics.
Earl Weaver was doing it. Davy was the first guy that I ever came across that the smartest baseball man I've ever encountered. He had a sense for these statistics without even having an analytical sheet in front of him. He knew. He invented, at least in my mind, the A bullpen, the B bullpen. He ran a bullpen as good as anybody I've ever had, and he was the kind of the first guy that ever implemented that. People think Tony La Russa was the bullpen guru. We're going left on left, right on right. Davey was doing that years before that, and was one of the groundbreaking analytical managers before we even had analytics. So I think that there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, and there's a lot of ways to win championships. We won a championship in 12, 14, 16, 17, doing it the same way we did it in 19 and didn't win the World Series. And I could argue with people in this room, Chelsea, who covered us for a long time, that some of those 12, 14, 16, 17 teams were better than the 19 team. And but what we had in the 19 team, we had a lot of grinders that put the name in the front of the jersey in front of everything else.
And Jane, do you see this homogenization that Alderson and Bregman are talking about? I see it with little kids when I watch kids in a batting cage when I'm playing in my softball game on Sunday. And the swings are the same. There's a training method for how you become a good baseball player now.
Yeah, and it is so pervaded the sport that it's boutique coaches for 12-year-olds. They're not only a pitching coach, but they got a hitting coach, they got a throwing coach. Then they go to Driveline for a summer. Then they go, they don't like that. Then they go to what's the one in the Maven? I love the name Maven. That's the place where Spencer Strider learned how to throw his curveball. And the problem is, baseball used to be a sport, this sounds pie-eyed, you could learn as a kid by yourself out on a street, throwing a ball, hitting a sewer, whatever it was. You could start to do those gestures that are sort of feel so natural to some people, even though pitching isn't. We all know that. But now it's become a country club sport. And parents, which makes it wider and more suburban and more California, Florida, Southeast, Southwest. And that really troubles me because, one of the things that has happened in addition to the decline in pitching is the decline in black players. There used to be close to 20% of black players in Major League Baseball, and somehow that's deteriorated to 6%. And that's not just bad business. It's bad politics. It's wrong. It's just plain wrong. And if you think back to the 80s and some of the great black American players that were in the game then, they gave it a different dimension. You want to get back to why it's so one-dimensional now? That's part of the reason. And, my proposal for that, which I know Mike won't want to say a word about because we've discussed it before, is, all that gambling money they're raking in, the $1 billion a year, as far as I'm concerned, they can take at least half of it and use it to create Major League Baseball training complexes in every Major League city. Now,
Like we have in Washington.
yeah, there's one in Washington, but I'm talking about ones with the same kind of quality of teaching and facilities and equipment that they put in the DR. Nothing wrong with the Latin American players. They're probably the most exciting players in the sport now. But, and God bless them, they're great. But why not here? I mean, does anybody remember Ricky Henderson, Tim Raines, those kind of guys? Where are they? I'm sorry? And the other thing that really troubles me, and I think Mike and I have talked about this too, is...
Right, Jazz Chisholm is who you're referring to, right?
I know they're referring to Jazz. I like Jazz, and they're not going to re-sign him. Watch. The other thing that really troubles me, and we talked about this at great length, it's somewhere in the book, there are swaths and swaths of empty seats at every game in Major League Baseball. As far as I'm concerned, let every kid 10 and under accompanied by an adult in free. They can afford it. And not only can they afford it, but it's paying forward. They need to grow a new generation of fans because I've been told recently I'm dying. And by which I mean I'm old, and so people say, well, your generation is gone, and your generation is the one that supported baseball all these years. That's probably true.
Well, this is a great segue. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
My next,
right, I know.
My next question was going to be about these Savannah Bananas. Now, there's a scene in the book where Mike and Jane talk about the Savannah Bananas. And for those of you who don't know who the Savannah Bananas are, go on like TikTok and you can learn about them. So the Bananas are kind of the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball. They have been wildly successful. They have sold out Major League ballparks this summer, and they've sold out the Nats ballpark. They wear bright yellow uniforms. It's constant antics and entertainment on the field. Some of the Bananas rules, which sort of are intended to make baseball livelier and more fun, include no bunting, no mound visits, no walks, which is a crazy one. Everybody on the field in defense has to touch the ball while the guy that got a walk tries to run around all the way around the bases. Foul balls caught in the stands by fans count as outs. Mike, you say to Jane in the book, the game of baseball is the carnival for me, the confrontation of pitcher and batter, fielder and runner, that's the carnival. To which Jane responds, yeah, but we're not 6-year-olds raised on dopamine hits. Mike, what do you think baseball can learn, if anything, from an organization like the Savannah Bananas?
Yeah, the entertainment value obviously is there for the Savannah Bananas. I've seen them a couple of times. They were in our park. They were in our spring training park where I saw them play mostly. It's a fun group. You know, they don't do 162 and 185.
Yep.
Catch a fly ball, flip in 162 games a year in 185 days, and then come and talk to me.
Those stilts get really tiring if you're pitching on stilts.
Pitch from stilts, every 5 days and that type of thing. I get the entertainment value. There's loud music. It's kind of like an NBA carnival type of atmosphere, and I'm all about that. I think that to me the beauty of the entertainment value of baseball is the beauty of baseball. It's Scherzer against Bregman in the 2019 World Series. It was Scherzer against Manny Machado in Baltimore that one day on a 12 pitch at bat in the bottom of the ninth. And
Ohtani against Trout in the World Baseball Classic.
Exactly, the World Baseball Classic. It's to me that's entertainment. I've had I've been involved in 5-hour games that were extremely entertaining and an hour and a half games that were extremely painful. So, to me, it's about the action on the field. And that gives me the entertainment value of it. I love about baseball is there is a moment to take a breath in between pitches and in between plays. You could talk to your son or daughter next to you. You can explain the game to them, and I know that we have every statistic in the world now on the scoreboard and that type of thing, and that's great if that brings in a certain aspect of fan into the ballpark. That's great. And the fact that you can now bet on the game from your phone at your seat at a second's notice is, I guess, brings joy to some new baseball fans.
Yeah. Jane, I know that you respect Mike's view of like the sanctity of the game and what matters is what happens on the field, and yet there are things that you believe baseball should be doing. What are some of those?
I was going to say, where did you find Jacob Young?
Jacob Young was a 7th-round pick, University of Florida. Just a dirt scouting job by our guys down in Florida, and I remember the scouting report on him was exactly the guy he is right now. Grinder, plays great defense, great speed, steal your bases, and a guy who hit at the bottom of the lineup, and that's what he is.
She's setting you up here. Go ahead, Jane.
How many people saw the catch he made last week, 2 weeks ago? There were two in one game against the Mets at Citi Field. The one that hit all the highlight reels is where he goes up to bring a ball back that would have otherwise been a home run, and as he comes down to earth, the ball falls out of his glove. And instinctively, he kicks it with his spike. He just kicks it, catches it with his glove, and it's an out. It's an amazing play. If you haven't seen it, go see it. That is the kind of thing Mike is talking about. And so how was it discussed the next morning on sports shows and in columns? Oh, that's a Savannah Banana play. And I thought, okay, first of all, no, it's not a Savannah Banana play because it's instinctive, not planned and practiced. I don't think he practiced that.
I don't think he does, no. He should not.
He should not. But also, that tells you how much the Bananas have infiltrated the thinking about baseball. That troubles me, okay? Because those were the kind of plays when defense mattered more than it does today, where you'd stop and say, could you see that? That's what made baseball great. Not some asshole practicing how to do a backflip in center field, once a week.
But people love the Bananas.
But the Jesse Cole, the guy who created the Bananas, the guy in the yellow suit, the yellow tux, excuse me, saw something that's really important for MLB, for executives, for managers, for everybody to understand. He saw the disaffection, and he diagnosed it. He understood the estrangement between fans and what I like to call real baseball, and saw that the distance between people and players now is a really deters people from coming out to the ballpark. So the best example, this was the day I saw you in West Palm. There's one of the foil teams that they've created is the party animals who like to take off their shirts. So there's an element of cheesecake here too, not just family-friendly stuff. But one party animal climbs into the stands during the game next to this beautiful little boy, and he says to the kid, "Will you sign my jersey?" He hands him a pen. "Will you sign my jersey?" Now think about the change, the complete inversion there of who's important. That kid is now a baseball fan. And how do I know that? Because the assistant manager, Adam Virant, a recovering lawyer of the Bananas, has kept in touch with the kid and knows. So the relationship has to be repaired. Players and management and Major League Baseball have to find a way to acknowledge the truth of what Jesse found and to begin repairing it. So one of the places Mike and I disagreed is, why can't we have a player go into the stands and sign autographs the way Joey Votto did in Cincinnati when he was on the injured list? Hey, you're getting paid to be on the injured list. Nobody ever pulled a groin signing an autograph, as far as I know. Take security if you need security. But to give you an example of how the estrangement, Joey decided to do it, and it was a great thing to do, but he was scared to do it too. He was apprehensive about what they were going to want from him. Were they going to, assault him? What were they going to, what? He went with great trepidation. And he told me later that he was charmed by the experience. People say, "Oh, well, Cincinnati, what's the problem?" Mike says, "Can you see Bryce Harper in New York at Yankee Stadium?" And I said, "No, because he doesn't play in Yankee Stadium for the Yankees," although he might have. Anyway, could I see him in Philadelphia doing it? You bet. Absolutely. I could have seen him in Washington doing it. It's not that hard.
Right. So you're talking about increased engagement. And I think you guys agree on the idea of more engagement. Some of the things Jane writes about in the book.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah,
First of all, I got to address this.
Oh, go ahead.
Sure. So, I mean, there's certainly a time and place for engagement, and you see it every day. We have Sunday signings where there's 4 players every Sunday. There's a lineup of fans that come and get their autographs, pictures with them. We do that every Sunday. There's special occasions where players go out to the concourse and meet and greet players. Yeah, it's scripted. It's safe. And to have a player just hop in the stands and sign autographs is a recipe for disaster. You'll be writing the next book about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, so the kinds of things that
Murder in Yankee Stadium will be the title of it.
The kinds of things, Jane, that you write about in the book and suggest are that, letting a high school kid warm up a pitcher before a game or maybe even during a game. During a game does not sound like something that we would agree on, Jane. I don't think I would let a high school kid warm up a pitcher between
being
innings.
Provocative.
I
You
understand.
get that,
It's
right?
a book.
Okay.
Let kids run against the racing presidents? Sure. And it's not like baseball's unaware of this, right, Mike? I mean, there is a major league game played at the Little League World Series every year. Kids shag flies during the home run derby. And I think we should wrap up here so we can get to some questions from the audience. But the prescription here, Jane, and where you're coming from is that we want to make baseball something that people can touch again and that little kids will like again. And what are the main things that you think need to happen for that to become a reality?
Is that a question?
That's a question.
Oh.
What should happen?
Let all kids age 10 and under in free with an adult. A friend of mine who's an economist ran the numbers using Cubs charges for a small hot dog and a small Coke, and it would have cost the Cubs $4 million, all of $4 million in 2023 based on that menu. Now, I'm not saying $4 million is chump change. It certainly wouldn't be to me, but to the 30 owners in Major League Baseball, even the brokest of them, the allegedly the brokest of them, it's bupkis, right? They can afford it. And that same year, the Cubs paid Jason Hayward $21 million to play for the Dodgers. So I don't want to hear about how broke they are. I'm sorry. I think they've started, and they've done a good job in starting to address the issues of getting more American blacks into the game and giving kids who don't have the money to hire a boutique pitching coach at age 11 a way to play, but it's not enough. They need more money, and it needs to be more than a show pony. What are the other good things I said?
I don't know. I'm going to ask Mike now, though, because you had your chance, Jane. It's your book, though. You'll get the last word. So, Mike, in the book, you say that Major League Baseball does need to market its stars better. And this goes to what you're talking about, too, making a better connection between players and fans. What have you seen in your time that would lead you to conclude that we got to change something about how we reach the public with our best players?
I just think that when I look at commercials, national commercials, I see NFL football players, I see NBA basketball players, I see international soccer players. They're on the screen selling all sorts of items, throughout every commercial that we find. I don't see any baseball players. I don't see the baseball players, with their images out there, with their, getting their voices out there. I think we're definitely lagging in the prospects of making sure that we know who these players are, and knowing a little bit about them, and making them fan favorites, world favorites, on the sports stage.
Jane, how do you feel about that? And is that different from in the stadium making the experience something that feels personal?
No, it's one and the same. I mean, it is really interesting. Even with Ohtani, if you look, you see one ad for him on American television. That's the one where he's, against a white screen or whatever it is. Why? I mean, why? I think players bear more of a responsibility than they are willing to acknowledge for their health and maintenance of the game, and that's something that, frankly, Tony Clark ought to be dealing with.
The head of the Players Union.
Yeah, thank you. How about reaching out? I mean, they're getting paid for it, right? I mean, why not? Why not do these things? I told Morgan Sword. Morgan Sword is the executive vice president in charge of basically everything that nobody else wants to do that's important in baseball. So everything that happens on the field, right? So he asked me the last time we talked, he said, so what have you found? And I said, well, people want to love baseball, but they want to feel that baseball loves them back, and they don't. And that, to me, is one of the central issues that the game has now.
All right, if you have a question, please line up. The microphone is right by this pole. Please walk over and get in line. And there's a handheld microphone right here that we can go into the seats. And before we get to the questions, I just want to say thank you to Mike Rizzo for joining us here today.
My pleasure. Love it.
And to Commissioner Jane Leavy. This book is lovely. It's fun. You should all buy it and have Jane sign it. Thank you both for doing this.
The Dusty Baker stuff is worth the price of the book anyways.
Totally. Go ahead.
Great. I have a question for Jane, but first I want to say thanks to Mike for all the great baseball memories you helped provide to this town.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
There were some tough times, but a lot of great memories too, so thank you. So Jane, earlier this year I read an article in the New York Times about how expensive it is just to be a baseball fan, a sports fan in general, right? The streaming services, the cost of the games, concessions, the merchandise. It seems like it's getting out of control. I didn't know if you have thoughts about that or how to possibly fix it.
Have you got a solution to human greed? I mean, everything is monetized, everything. And, imagine if Morgan Sword or my predecessor, Rip Manford, called a news conference. You're supposed to laugh at that. Called a news conference and said, we've been thinking about it, and we recognize how expensive it is to come to our ballpark. And so we're going to try some things. And let's acknowledge that the Savannah Bananas had some good ideas, right? So one of the things that they did, and it's not really true so much anymore, but at the beginning they had a flat fee of $25 tickets and all you could eat. They were desperate to get people in their ballpark, and it was only 5,000 people in their Savannah ballpark. But what about having a section at every game, since we know they don't fill it up, where first come, first serve, same thing. Flat fee, all you can eat, no parking, no alcohol, as Mike said. Why not? What would the PR value to Major League Baseball be to do something that forward-thinking, right? I mean, they're not broke. It's a $12 billion industry. They can afford these things. And even if it costs them a little, it would pay off in the end. I don't want to, keep harping on the thing about the 10-year-olds, but, in the old days, ballparks had sections that were designated for kids that were older. It was at Ebbets Field, at Forbes Field, here in Washington. Okay, you had your scout troop leader or whoever come with you after school. It was a day game usually on a Wednesday, I think, and businessman specials. We talked about that too.
I don't even know Forbes Field. Too young for Forbes Field.
Oh, thank you. I was too, actually, but that's all right. And they had a place where it was theirs. Nobody else got to sit there with them. It was their section, and it gave them purchase on the game. And that's the kind of thing that they could be doing that doesn't cost a lot of money. Dave Roberts said, you notice that, a lot of guys don't take batting practice on the field anymore anyway because of the traject machines where they can bat against an avatar of that day's starting pitcher. And the avatars never make mistakes, by the way. How about the fact that home teams take batting practice first now? They take before the gates open. I'm a baseball fan because I used to go and we're there at Yankee Stadium when the gates opened to watch Mickey Mantle clobber slop. But, it was exciting. It was thrilling. Everybody stopped. The other teams stopped.
I got hit by a line drive at the 1978 World Series, hit by Dusty Baker. In batting practice. So there you go. Tried to catch the ball. All right, we have time for only a handful of questions because we do want to get to signing. So quick questions, quick answers.
First of all, hi, Janie and Stefan. I've been a Hang Up and Listen fan for longer than I care to remember.
Thank you.
You've sort of danced around a couple of times talking about how there aren't enough people in the stands, and you've said several times the owners could afford the things you're talking about. They could. They could also afford to pay players. There are several franchises in MLB currently whose goals do not seem to be either winning baseball games now or at any point in the next several years. Certainly not going to ask any panelists to talk about their former bosses, but when you have the Pittsburgh Pirates, who everybody agrees are going to trade Paul Skeens, who is maybe off to the best 75 starts of anybody ever in the next couple of years, no one thinks they're going to build a team around him, despite him and Chandler, who one might think that could be the center of a competitive baseball team for a decade. No one thinks the Pirates are actually going to do that. I don't know of any team that is approaching the red when they claim they can't afford things. I'm pretty sure they all turn quite a bit of profit. Could there be something done to make teams more competitive? If we're talking about what could draw fans, I can't imagine a better product would hurt. And as we approach possibly another work stoppage or certainly another CBA, everyone thinks there's going to be a salary cap, despite perhaps what there should be. Should there also be a floor?
I think this is a good question for Mike. You're not in baseball right now, Mike. How do we address the issue of team spending so that we have greater competitive balance in other markets?
Well, I think competitive balance is a two-edged sword. First of all, competitive payrolls equate to revenues, and the more revenues you have, the more you can afford to spend on players and infrastructure in your organization. And I think that everyone has their own business model in Major League Baseball, and I know that it's no coincidence that the Dodgers and the Mets and the Red Sox and the Cubs, with the most fertile television markets in the country, have the highest payrolls.
So
what do we do? Jane, what do we do?
One of the parts of the book that I like best that nobody ever asks about, so I'm going to tell you, is why this exists. Baseball, unlike any other sport, professional sport, still exists in a basis of you earn money based on geography, right? So if you're in a small market, you're not going to get as much for your TV revenues. And that started in the 1880s with a guy who helped create the National League, who in exchange for saying, yes, we'll all play the same number of games and we'll have the same size roster and we'll agree to these rules, he gave them the rights to marketing and revenue for all their locality. Well, that was great, if you were in New York or maybe St. Louis or whatever, but it's not so great in Kansas City. So as many of you know, the Dodgers have an $8.2 billion 8-year television deal. The Royals were making 40 to 45. And the system that they've been living with is, regional sports network thing, which was a disaster for Mike and, the Nats, is falling apart now. Manfred desperately wants an NFL-style deal where you can split the revenues. And frankly, he's not wrong. It's going to remain unequal and unfair until they figure out some way that is more modern to share the revenues.
Next question, thanks.
Well, I love the book, and even though you're not going to be commissioner, maybe...
How do you know?
Well, it made me feel better that you're in dialogue with people like Mike and Buck Showalter, and that hopefully you'll have an impact. One thing that I looked for throughout the book that I didn't see until the very end was what you call oral pollution. Your friend Miss Sue refers to it. And I think that the ballpark experience is really... Now, look, I'm in the demographic of curmudgeonly old
right,
Jews that
right.
you are making fun of in a nice way. And so, but I don't like going to Nationals Park now because of the blasting noise, especially when the Nationals have a scoring opportunity. And I just wonder, maybe you don't even agree with me because you don't bring that up in the book, but I think it's a real problem.
You want to answer that, or should I?
You.
Okay. Well, I can't hear it anymore, so no, I don't. Yeah, it's a lot. And for people like you and me who grew up in, maybe having an organ play take me out to the ball game, it's unseemly, right? I like hearing the sounds of baseball better than I like that. But we got to get over ourselves. Matt
Van Hoos has like a degree from Oberlin. Why not let him loose, the organist?
There's only one. I think, again, if you're looking long-term at the health of the game, you have to say, what is going to bring in a younger audience? And that, unfortunately, is part of it. It doesn't mean you have to blast it when somebody's up with, on a 2-2 count in the 9th inning. There should be some judgment exercise, and I don't think there is any. I, for example, and I'm sure Mike hates this, I'm saying, they've cut down the amount of walk-up music to save time. Okay, that's cool, no problem. But let every player create their own playlist and give it away for free, right? Let the teams give them away for free and let them play it on a dance floor. out in what's now called the outfield experience. You want to go hear loud music? Go to the dance floor, right? Let's confine it to some times and places that make sense.
The bookstore does have another event at 5 o'clock, and Jane's got a lot of books to sign, so we're going to do one more question, and then Jane and Mike will be up here if you get your book signed, and you can chat with them briefly then.
Okay. Thank you for a very interesting presentation. I was intrigued by your discussion of pitching. Are the pitchers today better or just different? I mean, Juan Marichal and Warren Spahn famously each threw more than 200 pitches in 16-inning game, and they continued to pitch without injury. So would they be successful today?
Yeah, you couldn't pay enough for those guys today. They would own the team. Pitching is different. Each generation has its elite superstars, and this generation is no different.
Make her Commissioner Jane Leavy, Mike Rizzo, thank you all. And I think you're going to line up along the side.